Chapter 5, Safety Data Sheets, SDSs. SDSs and Hazard Communication. Safety Data Sheets, SDSs, are detailed documents that serve as a primary resource for hazard information, going far beyond the brief details found on a label. Under WHMIS 2015, the old Material Safety Data Sheets, MSDSs, were replaced with a new standardized SDS format. This 16-section format ensures consistency and makes it easier to find specific information. Employers have a legal duty to ensure that workers have access to current SDSs for all hazardous products in the workplace. Safety Data Sheets, SDSs. An SDS is a technical document that provides comprehensive information about a hazardous product. It is divided into 16 standardized sections that cover topics such as hazard identification, composition, first aid measures, firefighting measures, accidental release measures, handling and storage, exposure controls, personal protection, physical and chemical properties, stability and reactivity, toxicological information, and ecological information. Products requiring an SDS. Every hazardous product used in the workplace must have a corresponding up-to-date SDS that is readily accessible to workers during each work shift. This requirement applies to all hazardous products, whether they are supplied by an external company or produced in-house. Information on the SDS. The SDS is organized into 16 sections. Key sections for workers and employers include Section 1, Identification, Product and Supplier Details, Section 2, Hazard Identification, Pictograms, Signal Words, and Hazard Statements, Section 3, Composition, Ingredients, Sections 4 and 5, First Aid and Firefighting Measures, and Sections 7 and 8, Handling and Storage and Exposure Controls, Personal Protection. While other sections, e.g. toxicological, ecological, are important, sections 1 through 8 contain the most critical information for daily safe use. Section 1. Identification. This section identifies the product and the supplier. It contains the product identifier used on the label, as well as recommended uses and restrictions on use. It also provides the essential contact information for the supplier, including name, address, phone number, and an emergency phone number for urgent inquiries. Section 2. Hazard Identification. This is one of the most critical sections for a quick hazard overview. It provides a concise summary of the hazards associated with the chemical, including all required label elements such as the signal word, pictograms, and hazard statements. It may also include other hazards not otherwise classified and describe any symptoms related to exposure. Section 3. Composition Information on Ingredients. This section discloses the chemical ingredients and their concentrations in the mixture. It identifies substances by name, chemical abstract service number, and exact concentration or concentration ranges. This information is vital for understanding the source of the hazards and for occupational health monitoring. Section 4. First Aid Measures. This section describes the initial care that should be given by untrained responders to an individual who has been exposed to the chemical. It provides specific first aid instructions for different routes of exposure, such as inhalation, skin contact, eye contact, and ingestion. It also notes any immediate medical attention and special treatment that may be needed. Section 5. Firefighting Measures. This section provides recommendations for fighting a fire involving the chemical. It lists suitable and unsuitable extinguishing media, as well as specific hazards that may develop from the chemical during a fire. It also advises firefighters on what special protective equipment and precautions they should take, such as the need for self-contained breathing apparatus. Section 6. Accidental Release Measures. This section outlines the emergency procedures and protective measures to take in the event of an accidental spill, leak, or release. It includes recommendations on containing the spill, personal precautions, and emergency procedures. It also provides guidance on cleanup methods and materials to use to minimize exposure and environmental impact. Section 7. Handling and Storage. This section provides guidance on the safe handling practices and conditions for safe storage of the chemical. It includes precautions to prevent accidents, such as advice on ventilation and measures to avoid spills. It also specifies any incompatible materials and the environmental conditions required for safe storage. Section 8. Exposure Controls, Personal Protection. This section is essential for risk assessment and establishing safe work practices. It indicates the control parameters, such as occupational exposure limits, and recommends appropriate engineering controls like local exhaust ventilation. It also provides detailed information on the types of personal protective equipment required, including specifics for eye, skin, and respiratory protection. Section 9. Physical and Chemical Properties. This section lists the physical and chemical characteristics of the substance or mixture. It includes properties such as appearance, odor, pH, melting or freezing point, boiling point, flash point, and vapor pressure. This data is useful for identifying the material and for engineering and safety planning. Section 10. Stability and Reactivity. This section describes the reactivity hazards of the chemical and the chemical stability information. It specifies conditions to avoid, such as static discharge or temperature extremes, and lists materials with which the chemical is incompatible. It also indicates whether the chemical is stable and the possibility of hazardous reactions. Section 11. Toxicological Information. This section provides detailed toxicological data on the chemical ingredients. It describes the likely routes of exposure and the health effects associated with exposure, including acute and chronic symptoms. The information is often highly technical, drawn from animal studies or human experience. Section 12. Ecological Information. This section provides information to evaluate the environmental impact of the chemical if it were released into the environment. It includes data on ecotoxicity, persistence and degradability, and potential for bioaccumulation. This section is primarily for environmental professionals and emergency planners. Section 13. Disposal Considerations. This section provides guidance on the proper disposal, recycling, or reclamation of the chemical and its container. It offers information on safe handling and methods for disposal, encouraging users to contact licensed waste disposal providers. It helps ensure disposal is conducted in compliance with local, provincial, and federal regulations. Section 14. Transport Information. This section provides classification information for shipping and transporting the chemical by road, rail, sea, or air. It includes the UN number, proper shipping name, transport hazard class, and packing group. This information is primarily for shippers and carriers. Section 15. Regulatory Information. This section identifies the safety, health, and environmental regulations specific to the product that are not indicated elsewhere on the SDS. It may include information on other regulatory listings, such as whether the substance is listed as a carcinogen. This section helps employers comply with other applicable laws. Section 16. Other Information. This section includes any other relevant information not provided elsewhere, such as the date of the SDS's last revision and a key to abbreviations used in the document. It indicates the version history of the SDS, which is critical for ensuring the most current version is being used. Supplier provision of SDS. Suppliers may provide SDSs in paper copy, electronic format, or through a secure online portal. Regardless of the format, employers must ensure that all workers can access them without a barrier during their shift. It is illegal to charge a fee for SDS access. In general, employers collect all SDSs for all hazardous materials on site and will keep them in a binder in a central location in the facility.
SDS updates. Suppliers are legally obligated to update an SDS within 90 days of becoming aware of any new significant hazard information or changes to the product formulation. Employers, in turn, must obtain the updated SDS and replace the outdated version in their workplace, ensuring their SDS collection remains current. Availability of updates. To check for updates, always refer to the date of last revision on the first page of the SDS. Employers should compare this date to the version they have on file. A best practice is to implement a system for tracking and reviewing SDSs periodically, such as on an annual basis or by subscribing to supplier update services. Employers and SDSs. Employer responsibilities are threefold. First, they must ensure SDSs are available and accessible to all workers. Second, they must maintain a system to keep SDSs up to date, replacing old versions as new ones are provided. Third, they must train workers on how to read and use the information contained in the SDSs effectively. They must also ensure that the SDSs are readily available and accessible to all staff in case of emergencies. Understanding the SDS. SDSs are often written in technical, scientific language because they are prepared by chemists and toxicologists for a diverse audience, including safety professionals and emergency responders. Workers should be trained to focus on the key sections for their safety, sections 1 through 8, and know where to find critical information like first aid measures and personal protective equipment requirements. Employees should not hesitate to ask questions of their health and safety representative or manager if there are any concerns relating to an SDS or hazardous material. Use of the SDS. The SDS provides comprehensive, product-specific hazard information. However, it does not replace workplace-specific procedures. Employers must use the SDS as a tool to develop and implement their own safe work procedures, specifying exactly how the product should be handled, stored, and disposed of in their unique work environment. These procedures should be communicated to staff as updates are available and kept in an accessible space. When to use the SDS. A worker should consult the SDS before first using a product to understand its hazards and precautions. It is also used when planning work tasks involving storage, handling, or disposal, and is a critical resource during emergencies such as spills, fires, or exposures to provide guidance to responders and medical personnel. Conclusion. In summary, the safety data sheet is the detailed reference document that supports and expands upon the information found on a product label. Its standardized 16-section format provides in-depth knowledge on hazards, safe handling, emergency procedures, and more. Employers have a legal duty to ensure these documents are accessible and current, while employees must be trained to locate and interpret the key information within them, particularly before starting a new task and during an emergency. The SDS is an indispensable tool for developing workplace-specific safety procedures.